and he started making enough money to buy equipment, and started making more money to where he didn't want to work for me anymore because he was making too much money. But, Dr. Dre was my very first mixer, and almost everybody that mixed for me went on to, to be very successful.
Mm-hmm. And for those of you that don't know, swap meet is like the West Coast version of a flea market.
Oh, okay. You guys don't have swap meets?
Swap meets, I believe, mainly it's like a West Coast thing.
Wow. Okay, well, he and I, when he did go out on his own, we stayed together, though. He introduced me to a kid named Eazy-E. And matter of fact, Eazy-E and I ended up doing a record together called Radio. A lot of you may remember the song Radio. And then NWA got formed, and so it just seemed kind of, looking back at it all, it was just kind of cool. Watching these guys, and pretty much anybody from that era, I'd say 90% of the hip hop from that era got their start at KDAY.
And how did KDAY end up being on an AM band where most of the music stations were on FM? It was on 1580 AM, the original KDAY.
Well, if I'd have been working at an FM, I would have started it there. But at that time, AM was not as it's a little bit different. It wasn't like it is now, where people don't really tune the AM for music unless it's oldies. But back then, AM could survive, especially in LA. You had, it was a different time.
So this was back during the ages, kids, of spin pots, carts, reel-to-reels, and stations actually signed off. There was no automation.
There you go. We started that format, just for your timeline, in August of 1983. That's when it all started.
August of 1983. So, was there any stunning or anything before the format, or did it switch from a previous format into the hip-hop format?
Well, what I did is I just went in there and just, I can program and talk, and some of you guys listening may not understand it, but I basically just cleaned it up, and I wasn't trying to turn it into a hip-hop format. What I was trying to do is just play the hits and be a reflection of what the community wanted. So many radio stations now, they judge what they play by what's going on nationally, and you can get by with that, but, every city is different, every area is different, and so I just tried to become a reflection of what Los Angeles was, and that's, that's really, it was very simple.
So tell me about your other interactions with West Coast rap artists. You talked about your interactions with Eazy-E and with Dr. Dre when he was with World Class Wrecking Crew, and it was around the time where West Coast artists, they were only getting played out west, and maybe had a sprinkle of a few getting played on the East Coast.
It's a lot like that still. There's very few West Coast guys that do well on the East Coast, but I'm not sure why that is. Because there were certainly guys that were huge. I mean, part of our crew back then also was Ice Cube. I remember when he used to come to KDAY, and him and Sir Jinx had a little group. I believe it was CIA. I don't remember, but they had a little group, and they were trying to get something going, and we started playing them, and then they blew up. And Ice Cube, I thought since he was doing movies and stuff that he would be bigger nationally, but he's still somewhat regional. I've never quite understood the regionality of West Coast music as opposed to East Coast music, because we broke a lot of East Coast artists. I was the first guy and radio station to ever play LL Cool J. I mean, I could tell you a list of probably 40 different artists that we gave them their first break. I gave them their first break.
So, you guys were really breaking a lot of acts. Now, what was the difference between what you were doing as compared to what WBLS and KISS FM was doing out in New York?
WBLS, first of all, KISS wasn't even thought of when we were doing what we were doing, but WBLS is a heritage station, and Frankie Crocker was the guy programming that at the time, a legendary programmer who's no longer with us, but he was doing the same thing in New York that I was doing in L.A., which is he was a reflection of what was going on in New York. He was New York, and you know, I give a lot of credit to him for pretty much starting what people call today the urban contemporary format. And New York sound is just, you know, it's almost day and night compared to L.A.
Mm-hmm. Right, because when I hear a lot of early East Coast records like your L.A. Dream Teams and things like that, it seems like very high frenetic, fast-paced, beat-oriented, while East Coast hip-hop was more lyrical.
Yeah, one night me and Run DMC and Jam Master Jay, you know, it seems kind of weird to talk about a lot of these guys because they're no longer with us, but we were rolling through L.A., and we were listening to the station, and they were listening to, I think it was Egyptian Lover, and they said, you know, this West Coast music makes us nervous. And you know, and I think a lot of the East Coast guys felt that way. They just couldn't vibe on what was going on the West Coast.
Right, and I believe over at Kiss FM in New York, you also had DJ Red Alert, Chuck Chill Out. Then you had Latin Rascals that was catering to the freestyle demographic of New York, and then at WBLS, of course, you had the legendary Mr. Magic's Rap Attack.
Exactly, and I remember all of those guys. Red Alert brought a group of DJs to Phoenix. I brought my mix masters, and we did a DJ battle there. Winner take all. Winner was, I think it was like $10,000 or something, but we kicked their butts. I had the best DJs in the country at that time.
Right.
As for Mr. Magic, we brought him out to L.A. one time because, you know, I pretty much hyped those guys up, and everybody knew who he was, and we took him. You know, let me tell you a quick story. I hope I'm not keeping you too long, but there was like certain parts in L.A., you know, the gang area where certain colors, certain areas, blah, 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 you just couldn't say certain words. And one of the words that you could not say in one of the gang areas, he came in and said it, thinking he was in the right area, and we had to run up out of that place. I mean, people don't understand, you know, especially back then, that, you know, you just couldn't say certain things in L.A.
Right.
And we had the respect of the streets simply because we were not down with that, and I think that they picked up on that. And the fact that, you know, coming from Texas, I still was kind of naive to things